And welcome to this Thursday edition of AFA Today. Kevin McCullough is away today. Fred Jackson sitting in for Kevin. We have a busy news day today. You may have just heard on that newscast. President Barack Obama this morning, news conference in Brussels, Belgium, saying, I offer no apology at all on how we handled this prisoner exchange. President Barack Obama deciding all on his own, apparently, certainly did not consult with anybody in Congress, despite what the law says, 30 days notice to people in Congress. That even has Democrats upset with him. Didn't consult with them at all before giving up 5 hardened Taliban terrorists for one U.S. soldier who even his colleagues say deserted 5 years ago and walked into the hands of the Taliban. That story is still unfolding, and we're going to get to it in just a second. But, you know, a moment of nostalgia here. Most in our audience certainly remember the years of Ronald Reagan. Do you know, 10 years ago today, I believe perhaps one of the greatest presidents in the history of the United States, 10 years ago today, passed away. Gave us pause to think about those years when Ronald Reagan was in office and the absolute stark contrast in his worldview of what government should be, the role of government and the role of people. Contrast his definition with what we are experiencing today. And just to remind you, we want you to play you a little clip right now of a Ronald Reagan speech after his 8 years in office, maintaining his philosophy of what the real role of government should be. Have a listen.
Ours was the first revolution in the history of mankind that truly reversed the course of government, and with 3 little words: we, the people. We, the people, tell the government what to do. It doesn't tell us. We, the people, are the driver. The government is the car, and we decide where it should go and by what route and how fast. Almost all the world's constitutions are documents in which governments tell the people what their privileges are. Our Constitution is a document in which we, the people, tell the government what it is allowed to do. We, the people, are free. This belief has been the underlying basis for everything I've tried to do these past 8 years. But back in the 1960s, when I began, it seemed to me that we'd begun reversing the order of things, that through more and more rules and regulations and confiscatory taxes, the government was taking more of our money, more of our options, and more of our freedom. I went into politics in part to put up my hand and say, stop. I was a citizen politician, and it seemed the right thing for a citizen to do. I think we have stopped a lot of what needed stopping, and I hope we have once again reminded people that man is not free unless government is limited. There's a clear cause and effect here that is as neat and predictable as a law of physics. As government expands, liberty contracts.
Wow. As government expands, liberty contracts. So let's contrast what Ronald Reagan was just saying there back in 1988. He saw it coming, the problem with big government, as he said back in the 60s. We got a brief reprieve when he was in office because he understood the role of government. Contrast that with where we are today. Big government, especially in the last 6 years, absolutely no question about it. Remember when candidate Barack Obama was running for office back there in 2007? Going to change the country, going to change the world. Well, you know, he has succeeded in that. He has succeeded. Think of the size of government. Think what government is doing. Obamacare, taking control of health care in this country, and its disastrous effects that we have been seeing already. There was a story yesterday. Remember President Barack Obama just a month or so ago elated before the American people that about, 8 million people had signed up? Well, yesterday there was a story about 2 million of those who have signed up. Their credentials are being questioned. Now, what does that mean? Well, what they're saying, and this is a government report that came out yesterday, they're saying that Some people may be those who live in the country illegally, who have signed up amongst those 8 million, and many other things about their financial disclosures, et cetera, Obamacare, forced upon the people. You have Michelle Obama, the First Lady, telling schools across the country, school kids, this is what you're going to eat. All right? This is what you're going to eat. Big, big government. And what does that lead to? When you have this ultimate power, when government has been given this kind of power, I believe it leads to where we are this day. As we sit here on June the 5th, 2014, we now have a president who, as I mentioned off the top of the program, says no apology for what I have done. Well, what has he done? Given up 5 hardcore Taliban terrorists. He decided on his own. Listen, folks, just how bad this is. Even some of the most liberal Democrats out there, like Senator Dianne Feinstein, they say openly the president has broken the law because he did not give the 30-day notice to anyone in Congress. And he tries to explain that way, saying, well, I've talked to members of Congress over the last couple of years about this. Well, there are some members of Congress saying, he never talked to me, never knew anything about this. But this morning in Brussels, Belgium, once again, the president, Barack Obama, saying, I've been no apology. Let me just review a few things of what he said this morning, all right? We don't condition whether we make the effort to get them back. We don't condition? This will delight terrorists, folks, to hear the President of the United States saying, no condition, we'll do anything to get our members back, our soldiers back. We'll do anything. Well, the terrorists are saying, well, that's wonderful. Let's go grab us some more American soldiers, keep them in custody, because you now have a president that says he'll do anything. And many people believe what he's really talking about there, the president's real goal is to empty Gitmo. Turn them all loose. There is no question about that. That has been on his agenda since the day he started in office, since he took over the Oval Office. You'll remember, I'm going to close down Gitmo. I'm going to do it. I'm going to free all of those terrorists. And the idea that we hand these 5 guys over last week to Qatar, really, you think, and the president has been saying, we're going to monitor these guys that we let loose. We're going to monitor them. Really? You're going to monitor them? These guys are going to do whatever they want. The president this morning in Brussels, Belgium, also said that Bergdahl's health had been deteriorating, and we were deeply concerned about that. Have you watched the video? We had this video up on One News Now yesterday of the turnover. The Taliban's terrorists actually had a video of this turnover, which they released to the public yesterday. Bergdahl was walking just fine. Didn't look too bad other than being a little tired, and he was blinking his eyes, probably because he was blindfolded, as they moved him to this intercession point where he was turned over to American authorities. But that was about it. He seems to be fine. Certainly, he looks like he was well fed. Doesn't look like any weight loss at all in all the pictures that we've seen. So we were worried about his deteriorating health, according to the president. We saw an opportunity and we seized it, the president said this morning, and I make no apologies for that. No apologies. Tell me, are we going to get an apology from President Barack Obama when these freed terrorists resume their activity? And I tell you, you'd have to be a foolish person to believe that they will not resume their activity, if not intensify it. They're free. They can do whatever they want. Obama said his administration had discussed the possibility of such an exchange with members of Congress in the past, but he did not. This is the Associated Press talking, the reporter who attended this news conference in Brussels this morning. But he did not notify lawmakers in advance that he planned to release Guantanamo detainees. He is required to provide such notice 30 days ahead of a release. President Barack Obama, the President of the United States, has broken the law. He has broken the law. He went on to say, because of the nature of the folks that we were dealing with and the fragile nature of these negotiations, we felt it was important to go ahead and do what we did. Now, in previous statements about this release of these 5 Taliban terrorists, he said, we've been working on this for a while. Well, you've been working on it for a while. Do you think there might have been a moment when you thought about obeying the law, Mr. President, and notifying people on Capitol Hill this was your intention? But as I mentioned a few moments ago, earlier this week, Democrat Senator Dianne Feinstein openly expressed her outrage over President Obama, quote, this is her quote, totally breaking the law by failing to inform Congress of Sergeant Bo Bergdahl and the Taliban prison swap. Of course. Now, you would expect Republicans to make those kinds of statements, but this is Dianne Feinstein, one of the most left-wing Democrat senators, been there for years, and she is outraged at what her president has done. President Barack Obama, still back to the news conference this morning, he said that as Commander-in-Chief of U.S. military forces, he has a responsibility for those soldiers. Really? Did you not have a responsibility, President Barack Obama, to realize what was going on at Veteran Affairs hospitals when U.S. soldiers that you claim to be so concerned about were dying because they weren't getting appointments to see doctors? And now you expect us to believe that you're so concerned about this one soldier that you had to act and move outside the law, breaking the law. And what about those soldiers, President Barack Obama, at Fort Hood, who were gunned down, slaughtered by this Islamic member of our forces who cried out in praise to Allah? Yes, he was a terrorist in a U.S. soldier's uniform. And yet, Mr. President, you and your Attorney General, Eric Holder, refused to call it an act of terrorism. You call it workplace violence. And in case you need reminder, folks, because of that designation of workplace violence, the families of those slain soldiers at Fort Hood cannot get the proper benefits that they are due because you refuse to call it an act of terrorism. Where is your concern for those soldiers, sir? You know, I think it has just come to this. I don't think Barack Obama really cares what America thinks anymore. In fact, that is the theme of a very, very powerful editorial today by George Will. And you may have seen it. And the title of that editorial, When a President Goes Rogue. You know what a rogue is? A guy who thinks he can do anything at all that he wants. He doesn't care about the consequences. He's going to do whatever he wants. When a president goes rogue, we're going to review some of George Will's thoughts when we come back after the break. We're also going to go to our phones, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Where is all this going, folks? 888-589-8840 is the number to call. We want to hear from you. Do we now have a rogue president in the White House? And what's going to be done about it? Is this the straw that breaks the camel's back? Is this going to be manifested? Are the American people going to speak out this fall when they get a chance to go to the polls? We'll see. Much more ahead here on AFA Today with Fred Jackson, sitting in for Kevin McCullough. We're back in 3.